Charlie, talk to us about why this has suddenly become so extraordinarily popular. That's a massive amount of inflows.
It is really a massive amount of money, Vonnie. Just to put it in perspective, there's only 11 bond funds in the world that have more than $50 billion. And this European fund took in 30 in just the first 8 months of the year. And it seems to be a Dan Ivascyn story. He's been a terrific money manager for the last 10 years, tremendous results at the U.S. fund. And, just somehow this year, Europe seems to have discovered him. It's not just Europe, Asia, really the rest of the world. And he is just very hot at the moment.
What's he doing in the fund that's creating this success for him?
It's always a little bit hard to analyze his funds, but he has this sort of two-pronged strategy. On the one hand, he buys, higher yielding, somewhat riskier bonds, mortgage bonds, emerging market, and so on. But he also blends that with some safer bonds, government bonds, Australian bonds, U.S. bonds, and somehow the combination has just worked. He's not only had excellent results, he's had consistent results, and that's the kind of thing that really gets people's attention.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, what are those results?
Well, the U.S. fund has done more than 9% a year over the last 10 years. Over the last, 3 years, it's 5%. And, if you compare it to almost anything, any kind of underlying index, it's just done a lot better. It's got a higher dividend yield. Some people think, maybe this isn't sustainable, but for now, the numbers are what they are, and, people can't get enough of the guy.
Charlie, it might be a little unfair and at the worst irrelevant to compare bond fund managers, but, we like doing it. Is he the new Bill Gross?
Well, it's interesting. In terms of personality, he's very much the anti-Bill Gross. Bill Gross was everywhere. You see his picture everywhere. He talked everywhere. He had a lot to say. Dan Ivascyn doesn't really have that much today to say. He's not a household name, but he's the Bill Gross in one way, that Pimco has become extremely dependent on him. He's really attracting a lot of their money, and he is really the key man there.
Now, we know a lot about the processes at Pimco. Dan Ivascyn, does he play the kind of role that Bill Gross played when they have these committees about what should and shouldn't be invested in? Is his the biggest voice in the room?
It's an interesting question. I don't 100% know the answer. I'm sure people listen with what he had to say. I think he's not as forceful a personality, doesn't really require quite as much attention. But I'm sure, when you've got a track record like he has, when you're managing as much money as he has, people sit up and take notice when you open your mouth.